Good day to everyone. So for this video lecture, I'm going to start a series of lectures on the topics that I have not discussed na nandoon sa syllabus ninyo. So may mga topics, so tinignan ko ulit yung mga syllabus ninyo sa 140 and nakita ko na merong mga topics na hindi ko na i-elaborate or hindi ko na discuss completely. So I'm going to start a new series uh, on this topic. So I will discuss this topic. So expect na itong video lecture na ito, hindi to parang may parang team, hindi ito yung video lecture for feeding, hindi ito yung video lecture for health management, parang ganun. Basta ito ay yung mga topics, additional lectures that I need to discuss. So, kasi last video lecture doon sa farm analysis, yun na yung last part ng syllabus ninyo sa farm analysis. So, ito yung mga topics na kailangan ko pang i-discuss or na-miss out ko na i-discuss sa inyo. So, first topic is on the preparing a breeding program. So, sa breeding program, it is an essential component in any animal production, particularly swine. Kasi sa breeding program, dito ka makakapag-produce ng ng mga offspring, mga animals mo that have a good characteristic, mga ganon, that have, kumbaga, if you are in meat production, then dapat maganda yung breeding program mo para makapag-produce ka ng mga baboy na maganda yung growth rate, maganda yung FCE, maganda yung FCR. So, yung breeding program essentially is a important component ng ating ating swine production, sa swine production natin. So, um, first is we need to discuss yung how to set up a breeding program. Ano yung mga things that we need to consider, things that we need to look into before we start preparing our breeding program. So, first is yung production system. So, we need to set up and start with a description natin ng isang production system. In a more general term, it is the analysis of the way we keep the animals and for which purpose. So, which is relevant, mga ganun. So, sa production system, essentially dito, yung ano nga ba yung gusto mong i-produce? Ano nga ba yung goal mo na ano nga ba yung gusto mong ibenta, mga ganun. So, like for example, if you are into producing, yung gusto mong ibenta is yung mga breeders, then yung production system mo will focus on yung pag pag-produce ng mga pigs, mga boar and sows that are potentially can become a good breeders. So, yun. Pwedeng ganun or if you are into mga finishing sa grower finishing production system, then magpo-produce ka ngayon or um, magbebenta ka ngayon ng mga finishing pigs. So, kukuha ka or magbabay ka ng mga growers from other farms and then papalakihin mo until they become finishers, until they reach a certain weight, mga 90 kilograms, then i-market mo na. So, yun yung mga different production system. Pwede rin na from piglet to growers ka lang. Piglets to weaners yung production system mo. Bale, um, nakapag-produce ka ng mga piglets, then aalagaan mo sila hanggang winners lang, and then ibebenta mo na. So, pwedeng ganun yung production system. So, in this, you need to have a clear objective. You need to have a clear production system. Dapat klaro sa'yo kung ano yung gusto mong i-pursue na production system. Kung ano nga ba yung gusto mo. Ah, So, marami dyan, may mga pagpipilian ka. And then, think of it kung viable ba talaga itong production system doon sa current situation mo. Doon sa current situation ng pork industry, doon sa lugar ninyo or in the country. So, yon. Then, next is yung breeding goal. So, yon, yung breeding goal, um, dito, matatanong natin kung ano nga ba yung mai-improve natin for the next generation. So, ano yung goal ng breeding mo? Ano nga ba yung i-improve mo? So, ano nga ba yung mga characteristics, mga traits na gusto mong ilagay or gusto mong makita um, doon sa mga progenies ng mga breeders mo. So, yun. Doon sa breeding goal lahat yun. Makikita yun. So, this process requires a thorough study. And as animal breeding is only effective when yung breeding goal mo is uh, consequently maintained for many generations. So, dapat yung breeding goal mo, dapat consistent. So, consistent ka na ito yung gusto kong makita dito sa mga progenies ng mga breeders ko. Gusto ko na makita na um, mataas yung growth rate nila, maganda yung growth rate nila. Gusto kong makita na maganda yung feed conversion efficiency nila. Gusto kong makita na maganda yung feed conversion ratio nila. Or gusto kong makita na mataas yung litter index, maganda yung farrowing index. So, yun. So, yung breeding goal mo nakadepende doon sa production system mo. Kung ano yung mga traits, characteristics na required para maging successful yung production system mo, yun yung focus mo doon sa breeding goal. Yun yung mga traits, characteristics na kailangan pagfokusan mo doon sa breeding goal. And then it should be maintained from generation to generation. Kasi nga yun yung goal mo, hindi dapat na mag-iiba ka. Hindi dapat dapat consistent ka doon sa goals mo. Then for the collection of information, after you know yung breeding goal mo, dapat you have relevant information. So, yung mga information in respect or in relation doon sa traits ng animal, doon sa mga phenotypes nila, sa characteristic nila. So, dapat sa collection of information ka, may mga information ka doon sa mga traits niya, traits ng mga sows natin, mga boars natin, mga swines natin, that can help to establish the value of the animal with respect to the breeding goal. So, tignan mo kung ano yung mga um, characteristics na talagang may value sa'yo. So, like for example, if you are into a multiplier farm, if yung um, production system mo lang is yung pagkuha or pag-produce ng mga piglets, mga winners. So, yung gusto mong traits or yung mga information na kailangan mong i-collect in relation to their traits is yung mga farrowing index, litter index, um, mortality of the mga winners mo, mga ganun. So um, it focuses on the winning part ng yung mga traits that are valuable on the winning part um, ng production mo doon sa ng mga sows mo. So, yun. If you are on um, meat producing naman, meat producer, yung mga grower to finisher, then yung pagfokusan mo na mga characteristic, yung kukunin mo na mga information is on the um, ADG, FCR, FCE. So, titignan mo yung mga yan. Then, sa breeding value estimation and selection of N criteria, ito, um, dito medyo mahirap yung ano natin. So, since we're talking about ano na to, mga genetics na. Pero nowadays, yung information kasi ng animal, especially its DNA information, it is available na. So you can easily estimate yung mga breeding values nila. So yung breeding value, it indicates the value of the animal with respect to the breeding goal mo. So yung breeding value mo, if it is low, it will have a negative effect on the breeding goal. And if it is high yung breeding value ng mga alaga mong baboy, then it can improve yung breeding goals mo, yung traits ng na kailangan mo gusto mong makita. So yun. And then for selection and mating, then dapat tignan mo dito yung dito ko na magse-select. So you consider yung mga factors that you need to do, factors that I know na na-discuss ko ito, yung sa selection and mating, you consider yung mga factors na kailangan para doon sa successful selection and mating. Factors like yung reproductive um, sa reproductive part nila. So, kung nakita mo nang merong mga may mga sakit na yung mga baboy mo, may sakit na yung breeder mo, may defect na, kumbaga, then wag mo nang i-select so mga ganun. Then if you are pag nakita mo na maganda yung traits nung baboy mo, then maganda yung mga characteristics na naaayon or in line with your breeding goal, then pwede mong i-select as your breeder. So yun. And then lastly is the evaluation of the results. So the breeding program should be evaluated regularly. So yung pag-evaluate mo, tatanungin mo yung sarili mo if yung goals mo, kung ano ba yung gusto mo, nakamit mo ba on your breeding program, nakamit mo ba yung mga goals na kailangan mong i-attain. So, may mga na-observe ba akong mga effects nung selection ko, may mga unwanted results ba na nakita ko. So, yun, i-evaluate mo lahat yun doon sa last na natin sa evaluation of results. Kasi pag nakita mong may mga negative effect naman na hindi naman na-attain yung goals mo, then doon ka magpapalit, doon mo i-adjust yung breeding program mo. So kailangan talaga na merong evaluation of results. So we have here a parang design on a breeding program. So um, here we have yung one-tier breeding program na tinatawag. So, it is the simplest design for a breeding program. So, it involves only a breeding male, yung breeder mo na boar, and then breeding female, which is yung breeder sow mo. Then, minate mo, you have yung male progeny and then female progeny. And then, dito sa mga anak ng mga breeders mo, magse-select ka na ngayon uh, magse-select ka ngayon doon sa male na progeny mo and tapos doon sa female na progeny mo, magse-select ka. Then, titignan mo yung mga factors that in selection, kung maganda ba yung characteristic, wala bang defects. So, pag nakapili ka na, then pwede mo nang i-replace itong mga breeding males mo and breeding females mo when it comes to the time na unproductive na sila. So, yun. Yun yung one-tier breeding program na tinatawag. Then, the two-tier breeding program, ito yung involves a nucleus farm and a commercial producer. So, yung nucleus farm, dito talaga yung parang yung mga breeders na galing dito, most of the time, these are purebreds. So, talagang high quality yung mga breeds na nanggagaling dito sa mga nucleus farm. And then, yung mga na-produce nila, dinedisseminate nila doon sa commercial producers. And then yung commercial producers, sila na yung bahala doon sa mating nila sa pagpaparami sa kanila. So basically yung nucleus farm, dito nanggagaling lahat ng um, mga yung mga breeders, yung mga magagandang breeders. So dito kumukuha yung mga commercial producers natin. So when we say genetic lag naman, it is the time it takes for a genetic improvement made in the selection program of the nucleus farm to trickle down to the commercial market or itong commercial producers. So, yun yung genetic lag. Kasi sa nucleus farm mo, dito talaga nai-improve yung genes ng mga animals mo. Ng mga breeder natin na mga pigs. Pero, pag dinasseminate mo na ito sa mga commercial producers, yung na-improve mong genes dito sa ano, dito sa mga swines mo dito sa nucleus, merong lag, may delay na magaganap. So kumbaga, hindi mo pag bumili ka sa nucleus farm, hindi mo ah, mapapansin or hindi mo makukuha kaagad yung genetic improvement na na-achieve nila sa nucleus farm doon sa commercial producers mo. It takes time para ma-achieve mo rin or makuha mo rin yung genetic improvement na um, yung genetic improvement kasi may genetic lag na tinatawag. Then for the three-tier breeding program, so it involves yung nucleus, multiplier farms, then commercial producers. So sa nucleus, dito yung may genetic improvement ng mga breeders mo, i-disseminate nila sa mga multiplier farms wherein they are tasked to produce yung mga or multiply yung mga breeders na nanggaling sa nucleus, and then yung multiplier farms pupunta ngayon sa commercial producers. So, yun yung ng three-tier breeding program na tinatawag. So ito yung components ng isang breeding program. So, ito, if I require yun to make a breeding program, ito yung mga components niya. So, first is yung introduction. So, dito, i-discuss mo, i-introduce mo yung yung animal mo, yung ano bang industry yan. So, yung sa atin, since this is 140, then mag-introduce ka konti doon sa swine industry, yung mga different production system sa swine industry, yung current state ng production system dito sa yung current state ng swine industry, then you introduce briefly yung mga breeding programs, yung mga breeding scheme, mga mating system for swine production. So, yun. And then, sa production system, next part is yung production system. So, dito, i-elaborate mo kung anong production system yung gusto mo. Breeder to winner, piglet to winner, grower to finisher, mga ganun. So, depende na yan kung anong gusto mong production system. And then, yung breeding objective mo, dapat dito, you state kung ano yung gusto mong ma-attain doon sa breeding program mo. So, yung breeding objective dapat in relation to the production system. Hindi yung sa production system mo is gusto mong as a multiplier farm, yung magparami ng mga piglets. Tapos sa breeding objective mo is yung gusto mong ma-attain a good ADG. So, hindi na pwede yun. So, hindi yun in relation to the production system. So, dapat yung breeding objective mo in relation to the production system. So, if your breeding objective is high number of liters, maganda yung liter index, then yung production system mo maybe is yung production of piglets, production of yung sa piglet to winner operation, mga ganun. Then, for the description of the breed to be used, then dito i-describe mo kung ano yung mga gusto mong breed, kung bakit ito yung gusto mong breed, ano yung characteristic niya, traits niya, ano nga ba yung advantage niya from other breeds. So, yun yung gagamitin mo sa description of the breeds to be used. So dito, pwedeng isa na breed, pwedeng isa lang yung breed na gagamitin mo or pwedeng dalawa. So depende na sa iyo. And then animal performance recording. So dito, i-state mo kung paano mo i-record yung performance ng mga progeny, yung mga animals mo. So dito i-record mo baka pag sa growing to finishing operation ka, then dapat yung i-record mo is yung average daily gain niya, feed conversion efficiency, feed conversion ratio, mga ganon. Yung feed intake niya, so dapat naka-record lahat yan. Then, sa selection and mating, so i-ano mo dito, i-elaborate mo kung ano yung mga factors na you are considering when selecting itong mga future breeders mo. So, yun lang yung components of the breeding program, a simplified components ng mga breeding program. Then, another topic that we need to discuss is on the factors affecting puberty. So, sa factors affecting puberty, may anim yan. So, you have nutrition, genetics and breed, environment, age and body weight, leptins, and then growth hormones. So, sa nutrition, simply lang, it can affect the organs which produces yung mga gonadotropin-releasing hormone, follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and mga growth hormone. So, itong mga hormone na ito, it has an effect or it has an action on the hypothalamus and yung mga pituitary gland natin, which dictates yung puberty. So, yung nutrition, parang it indirectly affects yung factors, yung puberty. Kasi yung nutrition, it affects yung mga organs natin, yung mga liver, mga ganun. Basta it affects the body and then it affects the production of these hormones. So, yun yung nutrition. Sa genetics and breeds naman, generally, yung mga breeds that are larger in size at maturity are older and heavier when reaching puberty. So, merong ano yan, yung genes niya, yung genetics and breeds niya, it can dictate yung puberty ng animal. So, kung mas malaki yung size niya at maturity, they are older and heavier when reaching puberty. Yun yung parang common na nakikita nila. And then sa environment naman, may mga, hindi lang sa ano to, hindi lang sa swine, pero sa ibang bansa which have yung mga autumn and winter na seasons, during yung mga first 6 months of the life of the animal, it can increase or accelerate yung onset of puberty. So, yun, merong effect yung environment talaga. Then, there is also a similar effect of environment which had been observed in other species, sa swine, sa goat, sa sheep. So, yung interaction ng season and other environmental factors like yung temperatures, rainfall, humidity, can also affect yung puberty. Then, for the age and body weight, so, iba-iba kasi yung ano iba-iba yung parang age of puberty ng mga breeds natin. So, and then, may mga breeds rin that they need to be at this body weight to for the onset of puberty to occur. So, magkakaiba yan. Merong effect yung age and body weight. And then, for the leptin naman, itong leptin na ito, they are primarily produced by the adipose tissue. And then, itong mga leptin na to, they signal yung nutritional status of the animal. And then, there is a study that showed that yung mga the higher the leptin content during yung pre-puberty, before puberty ng animal, kung mas mataas daw yung leptin content niya, it can attain puberty earlier. Mas maaga daw yung puberty na magaganap. And then for the growth hormones, um, it can increase yung ano ng puberty. So generally kasi yung growth hormones nag-i-increase yan just before the onset of puberty. And then um, here we have another topic on the fertilization and conception. Basically parang magkapareho lang sila. Sa fertilization, it is the fusion of the female gamete. So yung female gamete natin, yun yung egg cell, with the male gamete, yung sperm cell, to form a single cell termed as zygote. So yung pag-fuse, yung process kung saan nag-fuse yung dalawang yung dalawa, male and female gamete, yung sperm cell at saka yung egg cell, yun yung fertilization. So yung fertilization in animals is a biological process that involves a sperm merging with an egg and leading to the development of the embryo. So yun yung fertilization. Basta yung pag-fuse ng dalawang gametes, yung male and female gametes. When we say conception naman, it is the time when the sperm travels up through the vagina into the uterus and fertilize an egg found in the fallopian tube. So conception is the time when the sperm travels up through the vagina into the uterus and fertilize an egg found in the fallopian tube. So yung pagkakaiba lang nila is yung conception, it is a more broader term, broader process, mas malawak yung process. Kasi yung conception, from the time na na-ejaculate yung sperm, na nag-travel dun sa vagina, into the uterus, and then sa pag-fertilize nung egg cell, yun yung conception. Pero yung fertilization lang kasi, it is the process dun sa yung sperm lang, nag-fuse na or nag-fertilize na yung egg cell. So yun, parang yung conception na term, kaakibat noon, nandoon yung term na fertilization. So yun yung pagkakaiba. So sa natural mating naman versus AI, when we say natural mating, it involves bringing the boar to mate in heat yung may estrus na gilt or sow or vice versa. Pwede mo namang yung gawin mo is yung mga sow in heat mo yung papupuntahin mo doon sa boar. And then separating them the two after mating. So after mating, then separate mo ulit. So sa natural mating, it allows producers to easily identify which sow or gilt is bred and which is not. Kasi nga, basically when we say natural mating sa mga baboy natin, lalong-lalo na if nakahiwalay naman yung sow mo sa boar mo, yung natural mating can also be called hand mating kasi you assist yung mga baboy natin. So, you can easily identify, pwede mong i-record kasi nandoon ka mismo. Ina-assist mo mismo yung mga baboy sa pag-mate. So, you can easily identify kung ano yung sow or gilt or yung boar that are bred and which is not. Then, with that, kasi nga nandun ka, nakikita mo lahat ng process, it can also permit the prediction of the farrowing date. Kasi na-record mo na lahat yun eh. Ngayon, minate ko ngayon itong sow na ito doon sa boar na ito. Then after 114 days, dapat expected date of farrowing na. So yun. Then, last is allows producers to easily determine the reproductive performance of the sow. So yun, kasi nga alam mo na kung ano yung na-mate. So, then you can see if maganda ba yung reproductive performance, nakuhanan ba kaagad, naging pregnant ba kaagad, or kailangan pa bang i-mate ulit. So yun, makikita mo yung reproductive performance ng sow mismo. Since you are parang hands-on ka doon sa natural mating. Then for artificial insemination naman, it is the most practical and efficient method to carry out genetic improvement in swine production. So, increase the number of sows that can be serviced by a boar. So, yun yung isang advantage niya ng AI. Increase the number of sows that can be serviced by a boar. Kasi, most probably, it can only service around 5. Pwedeng ganun per day. 5 to 10. depende. So, yung pag-AI, yung kailangan lang is yung sperm ng boar. So, hindi na kailangan yung boar mismo. So, meaning, hindi na mapapagod yung boar. Kasi yung sperm lang yung kailangan mo sa artificial insemination. So, kung hindi mapapagod yung boar, then you have yung sufficient sperm naman, mas marami ka ngayon maseservisan, mai-inseminatan na mga sow mo. Then, another one is it eliminates injuries na tinatawag. So, yung pag-eliminate ng injury, kasi sa natural mating, yun yung isang disadvantage. It is prone to injury. Lalong-lalo na yung mga landrace which have weak na mga legs. So, as during mating kasi, it is prone to injury, lalong-lalo na yung babaeng baboy kasi siya yung sinasakayan, tapos weak pa yung legs niya, then maaaring mabali yung mga legs niya. So, this can cause injury. So, kung artificial insemination, since wala nang bore na papatong doon sa sow, then this decreases or it eliminates injury. Another one, it reduces or completely controls the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. So yun. Kasi nga, hindi mo na kailangan ng penis ng boar. Kung, like for example, baka merong disease yung boar mo. Merong sexually transmitted disease. Tapos, ni-natural mate mo doon sa sow mo, yung kalalabasan is na-transmit yung disease from the boar to the sow. Pero kung wala yung boar, yung sperm lang yung nandun, yung present, then it reduces or it can control the spread of sexually transmitted disease. Another one, it allows small racers to keep a few sows without maintaining a boar. Kasi nga, you just render the service of technicians to artificially inseminate your sows. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-alaga ng boar. Then, the limitations of AI, it needs properly trained technicians. So, kailangan pa rin talaga na meron kang training on how to properly inseminate um, a sow, how to properly handle yung sow, how to properly handle yung mga equipments. Then, there is a difficulty in storing diluted boar semen over a prolonged period of time. So, ano yan kasi, remember that semen are living organisms pa rin. So, sensitive sila sa changes in temperature, changes in pH. So, medyo mahirap i-store itong mga boar semen. Kasi pag mali yung pagkaka-store, masyadong mataas yung temperature, masyadong mababa yung temperature, it can reduces yung efficiency para mag-fertilize. It can reduces yung pregnancy rate ng sow mo. Then, another disadvantage or limitation is that additional cost and equipment. Kasi nga, artificial insemination, you need a AI gun, you need parang yung paglalagyan ng semen, you need yung semen mismo, so additional cost and equipment, lahat ito. Then, another topic that we need to discuss is yung development of swine fetus. So, itong topic na to, I've tried to parang simplify it as much as possible. So, maraming process na magaganap in the development of fetus nung swine, yung piglet. Maraming magaganap na mga processes. So, on day 0 to 15, yung magaganap, yung fertilized embryo ngayon, di ba, nag-union na, nag-unite na yung fertilized ay yung sperm cell at saka yung egg cell. So, meron ka ng embryo, fertilized embryo. So, sa day 0 to 15, yung fertilized embryo will elongate and migrate to find space in the uterus. Pupunta siya na ngayon doon sa uterus, and then, during this time, yung sow fighting and trauma typically have little impact on the embryo survival because the embryos have yet to form attachment to the uterine wall. Meaning, sa day 0 to 15, hindi pa masyadong sensitive yung yung sow, yung pregnant sow, sa mga away, sa fighting, sa pangbubuli sa kanya, sa stress, hindi pa masyadong sensitive. Kasi nga, hindi pa na-attach sa uterine wall yung embryo. Pero, during yung date 12 to 15, dito na ma-attach yung embryo doon sa uterus mismo. So, in swine, 4 or more viable embryos must establish an attachment to the uterine wall in order for the pregnancy to be viable and continue past this point. So, kailangan daw may 4 na fertilized embryo yung dapat na ma-attach doon sa uterine wall para maging successful yung pregnancy at this early stage, at this day 0 to 15. So, kung lesser than 3, yung mangyayari is that walang magaganap na development. Then, from day 13 to 30, in this time range, nag-e-expand ngayon yung placenta. So, mayroong expansion ng placenta na magaganap. So, and then, at around day 30, dito na yung parang middle of the expansion phase ng placenta, and dito muna pwedeng makita or pwedeng i-check kung mayroon bang mga embryo talaga na nagde-develop doon sa sow mode using a ultrasound. So yan, sa day 13 to 30 or specifically during day 30. And then day 30 to 77 naman, during this time, noticeable organ development begins. So, may mga makikita ka ng mga talagang shape nung piglet. Makikita mo na dito. So, bones begin calcifying at day 35 to 45. Then, sometimes for a variety of reasons, yung mga individual natin na mga fetal pigs will stop developing and die in the uterus. So, dito sa day 35 to 45 or day 30 to 77, dito, medyo sensitive na ngayon yung baboy. So, may mga reasons. Kung yun yung mga reasons sensitive siya, baka may injury, mga ganun, may infection, which can cause yung mga pigs natin na nagde-develop to die. So, yung mga fetal pigs natin that die during this time of gestation, it can lead to the presence of mummies at farrowing. So, kung naka-experience na kayo ng mga may nanganganak, meron talagang mga mummified na tinatawag na mga piglets, yung patay na. So, as you can see in the picture, parang ganito. So, during day 30 to 77, most probably namatay itong mga to. Then, day 77 to 90, final placental expansion begins at day 77. And at this time, yung colostrum and milk production will begin. And meron ring continued fetal growth na magaganap. And then from the last part ng gestation period, these are the last few days prior to farrowing. As piglets are fully developed na sila at day 90. Pero they are not yet viable or hindi pa sila makakasurvive outside the uterus at this stage. So, meaning, wala nang development na magaganap past day 90. Pero, yung problema is that hindi pa sila pwedeng lumabas kasi hindi pa sila makakasurvive. Then from days 110 to pwedeng hanggang 115, yung fetal development are focused on storing energy for the piglets during farrowing and when lactation begins. So yun, may mga nutrients, mga energy na ini-store na doon sa piglet mismo para meron siyang lakas during farrowing and then during yung lactation para makakapag-suck siya. So yun. So yun yung simplified explanation on the development of the swine fetus. Then another one is yung breeding calendar for swine. So before I show yung an example of a breeding calendar for swine, let's talk about yung mga ano nga ba yung bibilangin nating mga days sa pagbe-breed ng isang swine. So first is yung gestation period. So laging tatandaan na yung gestation period of the pig is around 113 to 115 days. So as early as 113, pwede nang manganak yung baboy, mag-farrow, or as late as 115, doon magfa-farrow yung baboy. So yung pag-count nung gestation period is from the first day of mating. So meaning, pag um, nag-mate ka ngayon, kaninang umaga, then doon, magsasart ka na bilang ng gestation period. So, yun. Yung gestation period, it averages of around 114 days. Alam nyo na yan. Then, for the lactation period naman, uh, it can be as early as 14 days or as late as 28 days. Depende yan. And then, yung weaning to estrus interval, so, nawin mo na yung mga animal, then it can be as early as 3 days or as late as 8 days bago mo pwedeng or bago merong sign ng estrus doon sa sow mo, or yung meron na siyang sign of in-heat or sign of heat na pwede mo na siyang ulit i-breed. So, yun, as early as 3 days or as late as 8 days, average is 5 days. 5 days after weaning, you can observe if the animal is in heat na. So, yun. Then, ito yung tinatawag na gestation calendar, pwede rin gestation table. So, ganito yung pagbabasa lang. So, if you bred yung animal mo in January 1, so January 1, New Year, na minate mo yung sow, then, yung expected farrowing date will be April 25. So, yun. Pag sa, sa January 2, April 26, January 3, April 27, ganun. Then, sa January 7, yung mo naman, nasa 1 na. So, hindi na April 1 yan. Sa May 1 na ngayon yun. So, sa pag-breed mo ng January 7, May 1 na siya yung expected farrowing date. Pag naman January 8, May 2. So, ganun. Yung pagbabasa nitong gestation table. So, ganun. And then, after gestation, then magpilang ka ulit ng 14 to 28 days. So, pag dito, April 1, yung farrowing mo, magbilang ka ngayon ng 14 to 28 days. So, 1, 2, hanggang dito sa May 28. So, May 28 ka ngayon. Natapos yung lactation period. And then, magbilang ka ulit ng 5 days. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, sa June 2 na, dito sa part na to, June 2, tignan mo if merong signs of heat na. So, kung merong signs of heat na, then pwede mo nang i-mate. So, magbilang ka ulit ng 114 days. So, ganun. So, if dito sa June 2 ka nag-mate, titignan natin. June 2 is dito. June 2, asan? Dito. Pag June 2 ka nag-mate, September 24 na ngayon yung expected farrowing date. So, yun. So, kailangan talaga alam mo kung yung lactation period, yung gestation period, and yung weaning to estrus interval para makapag-produce ka ng isang breeding calendar. And then, we will going to talk about naman yung prolonged farrowing or dystocia na tinatawag. So, yung kasing prolonged farrowing, as the name implies, it is the failure to begin farrowing by 115 days. After all the behavioral steps have occurred, it can be used the cervix has not opened. There is yung parang causes ng farrowing, prolonged farrowing or dystocia is that there is a torsion, twisting of the uterus. So, na-twist yung uterus kaya hindi makalabas yung mga piglets. Physical blockage of the cervix. So, baka merong na-stuck na piglet doon sa cervix, mga ganun. Then, mayroong na-stuck na piglet doon sa cervix because it is dead, pwedeng ganun. Oversized, masyadong malaki, abnormally presented. So, abnormally presented meaning hindi nauuna yung ulo o hindi nauuna yung likod niya, yung tail niya. Bale, yung nauuna ngayon is yung mga front legs niya or mga hind legs niya which causes na nai-stuck or naisalat no quad iji piglet ijay cervix. Or pwede rin na malform kasi kaya nabla-block niya yung cervix or there is illness of the sow resulting to uterine inertia. So yun, decreased uterine inertia kaya hindi siya makapag-farrow ng maayos. And then, the clinical signs for the failure of a pregnant sow to farrow include the full udder, distress of the sow. Then, when the cervix is open but piglets are stuck, the distressed sow may have mucus at the vulva, makikita mo. And then, when piglets are in respiratory distress at the cervix, pwedeng yung mga fecal pellets na tinatawag or yung meconium, as you can see here, ito, meconium, itong mga black na pellets na to, can also be present. So, yun yung mga clinical signs of failure of a pregnant sow to farrow or yung dystocia na tinatawag. So, with that ends muna yung video lecture ko on the additional topics that I need to discuss. So, later on, I will discuss again yung mga additional topics that I've missed out. So, with that, thank you for listening.